Greetings, folks, and welcome to the Electromaker podcast. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely. This is the audio version of a YouTube show that I record each week for Electromaker on the Electromaker YouTube channel. And as such, some bits might sound a little bit weird because I'm referring to things that are on a screen. However, you can get context for all of those things in the description of this podcast. There are links out to everything I talk about on the show. And this show is a little bit different in terms of structure, simply because we just announced the winners of a long competition we've been running called the Make It Smart with Nordic Thingy 91 contest. And so the first part of the show is dedicated to talking about that. Speaking of which, let's get on with it. We're going to begin this week by looking at the winning entries for the Make It Smart with Nordic Thingy 91 contest. Now, this is a contest we've been running with Nordic Semiconductor and Edge Impulse since January, and it's one of the reasons why I've been talking so often and so much about the Thingy 91, just because I've been getting my head around it and learning how to use it. I've also been seeing the competition entries come in, and we had an expert panel of judges for this one too, with a top prize of $1,000 for the winner, $750 for second place, and $500 for third place. There was also a special machine learning prize provided to us by Edge Impulse of an Oculus Quest 2. And Electromaker contests are kind of cool. They've been going since long before I joined Electromaker. And the way it generally works is you are shown a piece of hardware and said, if you want to enter this contest, send us a pitch. Tell us what you would do if you had this hardware. And then the top 50 ones were actually sent this hardware in order to build their project. And they had up until May 11th to completely finish their project and document it on the Electromaker website. And now we've just announced the winners of those projects based on their documentation. Anyway, enough waffling. This is the blog post I wrote that talks about the winners. There's also a little video embedded here, but it's kind of doing the same thing that I'm going to be doing now. It's just a short video that goes through the winning projects. But yeah, let's get straight on with it. So in first place we have Typhour, who built this amazing smart city environmental monitoring system. And as you can see from the image here, in fact if I scroll down, you can see it a bit better, and yes, it's a 3D printed shell with a solar panel on the top of it, and that attaches to the Thingy 91 via a special charge board which is designed for solar power. And the project itself gathers environmental data and sends it to the cloud. And this project was born out of necessity. This build was built in Dhaka in Bangladesh, the capital city, which has a massive pollution problem. And the idea here is that it will monitor the local area, and it will send everything it can using the sensors on board to the cloud. Now, the judges were impressed with the implementation of this and of the way it was documented, the way it was talked about in general, and then obviously the final build itself is wonderful as well. But also just from the point of view of choosing a project to make, this impressed the judges because of, this is a real issue. Pollution in cities is something that can be monitored remotely. A cellular IoT platform is kind of perfect for that because you can gather the data, send it to the cloud, and with a solar panel on top, this thing can just run pretty much forever. So yes, this was the winner of the first prize, and Typhour walks away with $1,000. And if you are interested in actually reading the projects and looking through, because there's way too much documentation for me to cover on the Electromaker Show, unfortunately. I aim for 20-minute or so episodes, and if I talked through all of these, I wouldn't get through even one of them. But yes, you can find this blog post. I'll be linking this in the description, and each one of these links out to the actual projects written by the people that built them. And this was our very deserved winner. Now, the write-up from Jens covers the basic idea for what he wanted to achieve and different ways that it could be approached, the challenges that he'd have to face, and the kind of things that he'd like to specifically hone in on, because temperature anomalies is one thing, but determining whether a pot of boiling water has been left on for too long is something a little bit more complex. And then from a raw firmware point of view, one of the things about this that's super interesting is that it uses both of the MCUs on the Thingy 91, because the Thingy 91 is a cellular IoT device. It has a system in package, the NRF 9160, but it also has an NRF 52840, which is a very powerful Bluetooth low energy chip in and of itself, and that's essentially used kind of as a bootloader here. It's for loading firmware and running firmware on the SIP, but you can use it as a separate chip and get a few more peripherals attached to it, and of course Bluetooth if you want that. But yes, as I said, our judges were massively impressed with the implementation of this, the write-up of the challenges faced, the way that those challenges were faced, and also things that could be improved on or done differently if this was done again in the future. So yes, again, if you want to read the full write-up, this is linked in the same blog post, and it goes through a huge amount of implementations, including MQTT and even an app. Yes, this is an absolutely deserved second place. Congratulations, Jens. Now, the documentation itself is fantastic, but there's also a video of the app which is worth taking a look at. Now, I've never used Flutter, and I'm not actually sure how hard or easy it is to make professional-looking apps using it, but this is amazing. It has Google Maps integration and various ways to integrate with the app. So if you are a car owner, you can put your car on the app and register it as one that you're willing to share, or pool people and take people from A to B. And if you are someone who is looking for a ride, you can be a user that, as you can see on the screen right now, saying, I'm here, I'm trying to get to there and see if anyone is interested. This is only a prototype and a proof of concept, but it looks really quite good. And the GPS capabilities of the Thingy 91 is the perfect way to test it, because obviously in a real world deployment scenario, you'd make a piece of custom hardware that probably just had the SIP and the very bare essentials required to get the GPS working, and integrate that into the user's cars or something like that. But yes, this was a very deserved third place, a really well-polished prototype of an app that used the Thingy 91 as the hardware end. A really nice idea. So they were the top 3 prize winners, and as mentioned before, they win $1,000, $750, and $500 respectively. Now, the level of entries in these contests is always really high quality. So this time around, we really wanted to reward everyone that actually managed to submit their project. So all of the runner-ups this time around win a $50 Amazon gift voucher. Because the amount of effort and time that goes into these projects is something that we appreciate. And while it is a contest, yeah, we want to be able to celebrate everybody. And just as a point, right now is the perfect time if you want to see all of these projects to head to the projects panel, because a lot of the more recent projects are in amongst the general Electromaker project. In fact, we're going to be coming to this one in just a moment. And so right now they're starting to fall off the bottom of the page, but page 2 and page 3 are the places where you'll see a large wealth of these entries. And of course, they're mixed in with all of the other fantastic projects that we get from the Electromaker community. Anyway, we're not done quite yet, because there's still that special prize that Edge Impulse provided to us of the Oculus Quest 2 that they judged for what they thought was the best implementation of machine learning. Now, in my notes from the judges about the Edge Impulse Prize, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of choosing this one was really hard because they were all so good. But this one kind of tipped the balance just because of the really inventive way that it was put together. What you're seeing here is a test rig for simulating the breakdown of DC motors. So this is a rig to essentially allow for predictive maintenance of motors, or at least get close to it. Because, yeah, DC motors are used absolutely everywhere, and being able to predict when they may need maintenance or replacing at their end of their life is going to save you time and money, and also, frankly, stop any nasty surprises, especially in factory environments and places like that. And the way this works is really quite inventive, because you can see there's a little servo motor just up here, and that is designed to tap and cause unnecessary weird vibrations, and kind of to simulate when a motor is maybe running off axis or starting to break down. And there's a few other things attached to it as well. And all of this data is fed into the sensors of the Thingy 91 and gathered. That data is then used to train a neural network and model using Edge Impulse, and then that can be used to predict when an actual motor might break down based on its sensor readings. It is a wonderful proof of concept and a fantastic idea. It kind of took me aback. It took me a moment to really understand what was going on when I started reading this one, because it didn't occur to me that you could simulate something like this. But yeah, the thing itself is really well put together, really well implemented. The control application for the thing itself is a simple Python program, but the fact that there's even this control thing to impact control and to create these little shocks and shakes, things that you would feel in a real life environment, was something that, yeah, the judges found amazing. And at the time when I saw this one submitted, I did wonder whether this would be up for a prize, just because it's such an inventive idea. Anyway, I've waffled for longer than I wanted to about this, but I was very excited to be able to share these results. I knew who the winners were just before it was announced, because I was making all of this content for it. This is the first time I've been fully involved with the end of a contest as someone who's creating all of the content to be shared about it based on the judges' choices, and it was a really exciting thing to do. And I hope some of this enthusiasm will rub off on you, because working with the Thingy 91 is a lot easier than a lot of other platforms I've found, but it is also still quite a difficult thing to get your head around. I also, just a big shout out to Martin from Nordic, because he was in the Discord helping pretty much everybody as much as he could. This has been a fantastic contest. Anyway, before we move on, I just want to mention at the bottom of the blog post there is a few links out to other projects that were in this contest. Not all of them, but as I've mentioned, you can find some there, and you can also find some on the Electromaker projects page. And congratulations to everybody involved in this contest. It's been really fun to watch it come together. Really excited excited about the next contest coming up as well. I can't wait to see what people come up with for that. And there are going to be more contests. For now, I'd just like to remind everybody that every month we have a miniature contest called the Electromaker of the Month. And that is, again, a panel of judges looks at the projects from that month and chooses a top three to win prizes, including hardware and an Amazon gift voucher. Anyway, I'm starting to trip over my words, so maybe it's time we moved on. Up next, we have a cryptocurrency project on the Electromaker website, but if you, like me, are not into cryptocurrency at all, don't scroll away just yet, because this is mining cryptocurrency using a Node MCU. And straight away, even if you only know the basics about cryptocurrency, you may wonder how on earth can you mine cryptocurrency using a low-powered microcontroller like an ESP8266? And that's because the concept here is not the same as regular cryptocurrency. This is a toy project, this is a for fun project, and the actual coin it's using is called Duino coin, and as the name might suggest, it is designed to reward lower powered microcontrollers. Sure, you can try and mine this using a GPU or ASICs and wasting huge amounts of power like the rest of cryptocurrency does. I'm sure I've just annoyed some people by saying that. But that's not the point here. This uses a system called Culker, which I'm going to be the first to admit I don't fully understand, to reward low-powered MCUs. Now, Tarantula 3 is a regular on the Electromaker website for putting projects. Now, Tarantula 3 is a regular contributor to the Electromaker website, and they've made a little rig here, a little PCB rig for making 5 node MCUs into a little mining cluster. Now, they made a video about it too, which goes into some nice detail as to how Duco works, Duino coin. But there's also a little chart here that essentially Duino coin, founded in 2019, focuses on energy efficient mining and is for fun. You can mine it on a smartphone, a computer, and all this kind of stuff. But as mentioned, it uses the Culker rewarding system, which, again, I don't fully understand. In fact, most of the language here I do not fully understand. But essentially, this is a kind of proof of concept that cryptocurrency could work using low-powered microcontrollers with different reward systems. So if this seems like something you might be interested in, I will leave a link to it in the description. Not only is the concept of Duino coin something I find interesting and something that I can kind of dabble with cryptocurrency without really facing any of the problems I have with it, also the fact that you can make a PCB for a fun hobby project like this, and the entire cost of the project was less than $35, including all parts, is a really nice thing. So yeah, fantastic project from Tarantula 3, and I'll leave a link to it in the description of the video. Moving on to a video by KYLXBN. Now this is a YouTube channel that's new to me. This was just a completely random recommendation, but this is talking about the NES chip and the way it produced sound. The Nintendo Entertainment System had 5 channels of sound. It had 2 square waves, 1 triangle wave, a noise generator, and a sampler. Very simple samples. They had to be very low quality, very small size. But essentially that's how all of the sound and all of the music was made on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And this is a what-if scenario. By using hardware emulation, you're able to perfectly recreate the sound of these NES chips. And this is talking specifically about the triangle wave and the fact that they only actually had 15 steps of resolution in order to create it. That's why the triangle wave on the NES has that overall high aliasing sound. In fact, if you try and create a digital synthesizer of any type without enough resolution, you're going to get those artifacts. And straight away, before I get into it, there's loads of people in the comments of this video saying, like, why are you changing it? This is the sound that I loved, and that's not the point of this video. This is a what-if of saying, what if you could actually remove that aliasing? What would the music of these games sound like if it was created using more modern hardware, but the same 8-bit ideology? And yeah, it's kind of amazing, the difference between the two. And also, it has Journey to Silius, which is one of my favorite NES tunes on it too. So it's only an 11-minute video. Like I say, it's a completely new channel to me, but KYLXBN seems to have a lot of quite interesting stuff about emulation and the NES, and yeah, a huge amount of things about different chips that I've never heard of, and so I'm going to spend a lot of time diving into this channel, I am sure. But I'll leave a link to this particular one in the description of the video, and it is definitely worth a look. It's just 11 minutes long, and it's just a nice little dive into retro gaming sound without actually getting too deep in the weeds about how it was done. A really nice thing to watch. The Electromaker podcast is entirely funded by the Electromaker Store. Whether you're looking for your first Arduino kit or you're wanting to get deep in the weeds with industrial grade sensors and single board computers and things like that, we stock a wide variety of things from a lot of different stockists. We don't have any adverts on our podcasts, apart from this one for our own shop, and we don't ask for sponsors. We don't have a Patreon or anything like that. This is the only way that this podcast can make any money. So if you are considering starting a new project, maybe have a look at what we have in stock. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the podcast. We are now going to look at some things on funding websites in our section known as Funding Website Things, because we're going to be looking at things on funding websites. I'll be keeping it super quick today because we've spent so much time on top on the Make It Smart contest, but this one caught my eye because USB-C is quite rightly taking over the world. USB Type-C is by far the superior way of connecting things to things. I am on board with this, and this is a really nice little device for debugging. Now, as you can see, this is a pre-launch project, which is why I'm going to keep this exceedingly brief because we're going to come back to it when it goes live and see how much it costs and all that kind of stuff. But in short, this is a USB-C debugger that started off as a project, an in-house project at Google, and it's been forked and turned into its own device, and now it's going to be on sale via crowd supply. I'm going to literally leave it at that for now, and if you are interested in an open source log capture, easy command line interface and firmware update accessory for USB Type-C enabled devices, we will be coming back to it as soon as it goes live on crowd supply. And another pre-launch project, which I'll also be giving a little bit less time than I usually would to, because once again, I'm almost certain we'll come back to this one when it goes live, is ANTBBPS, which is a name for a thing. But what it is a breadboard power supply. Again, BBPS, breadboard power supply, makes a bit more sense when you think of it that way. And this isn't the first of these we've seen. In fact, I've got a couple of cheap breadboard power supplies that I use, but there's a couple of things about this that caught my eye that I really liked. First is a variable potentiometer for the output voltage value. And that only changes once you've pressed the button, and it has quite a variable output voltage. It can go from 1.8 volts up to 12 volts, and this is all DC. But again, for most things you're going to be doing on a breadboard, especially when you're starting out, this is what you kind of need. And the other thing I like about it is that it has this variable input voltage of 4 to 13 volts DC. You can power it via USB Type-C, but also these two screw terminals, so you can attach sort of anything to it. You know, if you have an old power supply for something you don't use anymore, you can just chop it and use the cables, provided it's within the voltage range. Or you can attach a battery to it. You can power this pretty much any way you wanted to, and still get a variable voltage out of it. Again, I'll leave it at that for now. We'll come back to this when we know how much it's going to cost. But these things are wonderful for your first getting started with electronics kind of days, especially if you can just plug this into your regular phone charger. It just makes things a lot easier. So yes, that was a very, very short funding website things, and I considered not even including it this week, but I thought it would be a shame to not at least briefly talk about these projects, even if we are going to come back to them. I will link both of them in the description because there's actually quite a lot of information on both pre-launch pages, and as always, as with anything in crowd supply, you can leave your email address in the box here and get updates when they do go live, although, as I mentioned, I'll probably talk about them on the show then too. It is time for us to announce the winner of the Inkplate 6 color contest. Now, if you're wondering what that is, it's this. This is a color e-ink display, but it isn't just the display itself, because on the back it also has an ESP8266 controller, which is the most popular at the minute, I think, wireless microcontroller or system on chip, or whatever you want to call it, for its power and for its connectivity. It also has things like a micro SD slot there and a few other nice peripherals. These 3 capacitive touch buttons on the front are a nice thing as well. This isn't the first time we featured Inkplate on the show. In fact, because we talked about them on crowd supply, they sent a few of these through for us to give away as prizes, and this one is by far the nicest. I do actually have a very similar color e-ink display to this one. It doesn't have the microcontroller on or anything, it's just the display. It's over there on the shelf, and it is a nightmare to use because the documentation just isn't there. There is some documentation, but it's not easy to follow, and if you want to do things your own way, you're just on your own. There's just nothing there. Whereas this, it has an Arduino library. It's particularly easy to use compared to anything else I have used in terms of e-paper. And that's why I'm very, very glad that we're going to be able to give one of these away. And without further ado, let's actually get to the part where I say who won it, shall we? So the ideas that you left in the comment section for this particular contest were just phenomenal. There were so many. In fact, I'd love to go through them. I don't have the time, but needless to say, all of the ideas that people put in were wonderful, and this one wasn't particularly easy to choose, but there was one that stood out. And that is this comment from Withnail World, who said, "I would use Inkplate to make a sign for the food bank collection point in our town shopping centre so that they could update their most needed items list remotely according to the latest stock levels." Which I think is a wonderful idea for a low power display that you can update over the air. It's just a wonderful use for it. So yes, we'll be getting this out to you with Nail World. We'll drop you a message as to how we can get this out to you. I'm glad this is going to be put to some good use. If you want any help getting that system going, I'm not pro by any means. I don't know what I'm doing either, but I'd be more than happy to help. It seems like a wonderful idea. We do have a few other ink plates that we will be giving away in the future. I didn't want to just drop them all at once, but I know we have at least 2 other boxes from Inkplate ready for us to give away. They've been very nice about giving these things to us. And of course, as with everything that we receive on the show, none of it gets kept. It all gets given to you. But for this particular contest, congratulations, With No World. We'll be getting in touch with you. But let's get on with the rest of the show, shall we? Shall we? We're going to close out this week's show by talking about the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4, or more specifically, drop-in replacements for the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 that other companies are making to account for the fact that you just can't buy them at the minute. The shortage is ongoing. But before we get to that, I just want to quickly talk about a blog post on the Electromaker website. Now, this is a blog from Robin Mitchell, who has also been doing some Electromaker Educates videos on the channel. You may have noticed he's been talking about microcontrollers and also cellular IoT so far. That series will be ongoing. And Robin is a fully qualified engineer. He can talk about things with an authority that I cannot. But what he's talking about is something I'm actually super interested in. This is the NRF 5340 audio development kit, which I may have mentioned on the show or not, or I can't remember if that was on social media or not, but I also have one of these and have been playing with it a bit. And it's kind of everything that I want in a development board, at least right now for me, because it takes a powerful development board, which has Bluetooth Low Energy. I mean, that's what the 53, I always forget the name of this one, 5340 is. It's a Bluetooth Low Energy chip. But it takes that and adds a high-quality audio codec system. It has an analog-to-digital converter for input, and it has a DAC for output audio. This is a high-level but still very detailed write-up as to how this thing works. So if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about it, I will leave a link to it in the description of the video. And this is something that I will definitely be giving away at some point in the future. As I said, I very rarely keep any of the things that I'm sent. But yeah, this is kind of the way that I hope a lot of people go, because ultimately these things are designed to be used in a variety of settings. The reason you want high quality input and output is because you can make smart devices with them, be them smart home devices, smart speakers, kiosks, whatever. But from people where, from my perspective, this is also a Bluetooth operated synthesizer, perhaps. I mean, it's got a powerful enough chip on it to run a few oscillators, I should think. And then, yeah, you can just send it Bluetooth signals to change it and have a little app and a synthesizer that you can control an XY pad on my phone. I'm running away with ideas already. Excitement? Yes. But if you would like to read this article, I will leave a link to it in the description. And there will be many more things like this coming. Robin is already, as far as I know, working on another Electromaker Educates video and will be doing more write-ups in the future. And I'm very, very glad to have someone with a little bit more actual engineering nous on board to do this stuff. And finally this week we are returning to the always wonderful CNX software to talk about drop-in replacements for the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4. And this is talking about the fact that Banana Pi are going to be bringing out their own Compute Module 4 drop-in using the Amlogic A311D CPU. And as the article goes on to say, there's a number of benefits with using this CPU. It can do some things that the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 cannot. But it, along with a couple of others that we'll talk about in a moment, also come with a few drawbacks if you are using the full range of things that the Compute Module 4 does. For example, I don't think any of them now offer dual HDMI, which I know the Compute Module 4 does, but I guess you'd have to be in a very specific use case where you want to have dual HDMI outputs from a Compute Module 4 rather than just a regular Raspberry Pi 4 or something like that. Rather than go into great detail about all one of these boards, I'm going to give a quick overview of all of them, because as mentioned, this uses a slightly different CPU, and CNX seem to always be really on it with finding the specifications for things. When I first saw that this thing was a thing, I didn't actually find the specs until it showed up on CNX. So yes, as mentioned, this is a drop-in for the CM4, but there is a few things it doesn't have. It only has a single channel of HDMI, single channel CSI and DSI for camera and display, for MIPI. This being Banana Pi, you're probably going to find that this will retail pretty cheaply. But this being Banana Pi, you'll probably also find that the documentation and the software implementation might not be finished or there at all. But that's not necessarily to knock Banana Pi. They do make fantastic stuff. It's just historically they have, not been excellent with that. However, there are other alternatives as well. Pine64 has put out the SO Quartz, and again, this is a drop-in replacement for the CM4. And there's a few things it has that the CM4 doesn't. Notably, an onboard system for AI. It can do it can do inference on board because the Rock chip 35. Now again, I always get these numbers wrong. 3566 system or module has an AI accelerator on it. It has an NPU. And as before, it is a drop-in replacement for the CM4, but it does have a couple of limitations. Once again, it has that single output of HDMI, but this one does have two separate dual and quad lane MIPI, CSI and DSI lanes, two for cameras. This one, if I remember correctly, here we go, yes, you can order the modules directly on the Pine Store with 2 gigs for $34.99, 4 gigs for $49.99, and you have to spend $74.99 to get an 8 gigabytes of RAM version. But still, for something that you cannot get elsewhere from Raspberry Pi itself. That's really, really good, even if you have got a couple of limitations. And the final one we'll talk about quickly is the Radza CM3, and this uses exactly the same system on chip as the Pine 64 version. Is very, very similar in almost every way. There is a couple of differences which you can find by reading the full article if you would like, but it also has this extra 100 pin output here for opening up the full range of what the Rockchip chip can do, the Rockchip chip. And the RK3566 is something that I find really fascinating. A lot of amazing things are turning up with it, and I think it's high time I got myself a single board computer with one just to see what it can do. Again, that's going to go on the long list of things I hope I get to when I have time, but yeah, something I find super interesting. And by the way, not only are you able to get these drop-in replacements for the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4, all of these companies are planning to give their own baseboards out as well, which interestingly will work the opposite direction too. If you do have their baseboard and you end up getting a Raspberry Pi CM4, that will also be compatible with that baseboard, although it won't have as many peripheral outputs as the Raspberry Pi 4 baseboards do, for example, things like dual HDMI. I hope I haven't just repeated myself too horribly. But I will leave a link to this first article in the description of the video, simply because they've linked to both of the articles about the other two in their first paragraph. And yeah, this is yet again another fantastic write-up of a thing on CNX software that I could not find that much information about when it first turned up. And yeah, I will leave a link to it in the description. Just before we close out the show, apologies if this show seemed a little bit pulled left and right in places, as well as having the timing stretched at the front of the show because of the Make It Smart contest. I am having horrific hay fever right now, so I am so full of antihistamines and having to stop and start the video to sneeze and stuff. So yeah, if this one seemed a bit disjointed, I apologize. Thank you so much for sticking with me. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And as you probably heard me just say, and maybe able to hear in my voice right now, it was a bit of a struggle to get through this one recording-wise this week. I hope that wasn't too much of an issue for you listening to it. There's a few disjointed places here and there. I had to edit around my coughs and sneezes, but as I say, I'm pretty sure I did already just say that anyhow. So yeah, that is it for another week on the podcast. I'm always happy to hear your suggestions, hear about things that you might want to see on the podcast more or see less of or anything like that. And you can get me at ian@electromaker.io, or of course join our Discord channel. But for now, I hope you have a fun, safe and creative week, and I'll see you in the next one.